Hey, I recently went to a horror film festival here in Stockholm, and I thought it would be fun to do a ranking list type of video of all the horror movies I saw. Well, to be fair, two of these movies are not horror movies, but the way that the festival people said, like, hey, all of these movies are necessarily not horror movies, but they're going to be movies that appeal to a horror audience, if that makes sense. So there's one like Chinese action film on here that's like a disaster movie, and then there's one really heavy drama. But yeah, with that being said, let's get into it. You'll gradually hear me get more and more positive. We're gonna do a best and worst type of thing here. So, starting off with the worst film I saw.
Jeepers Creepers Reborn is the worst movie I've seen in years. The fact that this film made it to release in the state that it's in is baffling to me. I hate to be the sensationalist, angry reviewer guy on YouTube, but I can't find anything positive to say about this. I hadn't really heard anyone praising this film before I watched it, but I was cautiously optimistic because at least this one isn't directed by a pedophile. However, what this movie does do, and this is the baffling part, is that it's constantly praising the first three films. Because in Jeepers Creepers Reborn, the first Jeepers Creepers movies are just that. They are movies. And our main characters are going to Horror Hound Weekend, where everyone is just constantly going apeshit for the creeper. It's like the whole horror community is based around these movies. It's absurd, and if this was their attempt to, like, distance themselves from the creator of this series, that has done some horrific things, they failed miserably at that, because all they did was they made a whole film just praising how good this series is, how good the creeper is, and how much people love the creeper. But that's not all. The movie is filled with terrible acting, terrible CGI. There's no gore effects at all. Like, the movie is essentially completely bloodless. You will hate every single character on screen. And I know I already mentioned the terrible CGI, but the movie looks unfinished. I've seen plenty of movies where the CGI looks like a bad like PS2 or even a PS1 game, but I've never seen a film that straight up looks like they forgot to hit render on some of these effects. It's baffling. The Rescue is a Chinese action film that tries its hardest to feel like a Michael Bay spectacle. Sadly, the only thing they successfully lifted from Michael Bay's movies is the sexism. I found this movie to be painfully dull, but I can also recognize that this wasn't really made for me. If you just want to see some cool explosions, maybe this might do. Although I think a lot of the CGI in this is really bad, so take that for what you will. Pussycake is probably for someone out there, but that someone is sadly not me. It's about a rock band who are supposed to play two shows in one night. The opening credits are set to their first gig, and then they jump in their van and head off to the second one. On the way there, the van breaks down, and they get stranded in this town that has been taken over by zombies. This is a horror comedy from Argentina, and I just didn't think it was very funny. Also, the zombies don't attack people by biting them. Instead, they throw up this white goo. And so, they pin someone down and then they like throw up on their faces. It's a really strange choice, and I think I would have liked it a lot better if they just bit people like normal zombies. But as I said, I didn't really jive with the whole tone of this film. So maybe, a part of the like throw up angle of this film, like maybe that was supposed to be comedic and I didn't get it. And I don't know, it's a little sad because there are things I really liked about this. The practical effects are great, and I loved all of the punk and Riot Girl aesthetics. So yeah, not necessarily a film for me, but hey, if this sounds like something you maybe be into, maybe check it out. I didn't hate it, but I just didn't think it was very funny. Whoever is out there telling people that Dark Glasses is a return to form for Dario Argento is straight up lying. I want to get that out of the way right from the start, because your expectations, they should be mannered. I did by no means hate this movie. It does, however, have some really big flaws that I can't really overlook. The main one being that this is a giallo without any sense of style or set pieces. And that's so disappointing because this is Argento. The man made Deep Red and Tenebrae. I mean, I know those movies were made a really long time ago, but still, it is disappointing. Anyways, I haven't really talked anything about the plot. It's pretty standard giallo stuff. Our main character is witness to a crime that leads to a cat and mouse chase where she is stalked by a psycho killer. And even though I was disappointed by the lack of creativity and the stylistic aspects of the film, I did enjoy the first half of this movie. There are some entertaining kills and sequences of gore. But at about the halfway mark, there is a scenery change, and I thought that it made the movie a lot less interesting. I'm obviously not trying to spoil anything here, but to me, it came across as a bizarre choice, and almost like this is what it comes across as. Like the production ran out of money midway through. Like, I know that's not what happened because that's not how movies are made, but that's what it comes across as. But if you go in with tempered expectations, I think you'll have a good time. Megalomaniac is a tough film to talk about, not only because of its dark subject matter, but also because I think it's impossible to see this unless you're at a film festival. I could see a streaming service like Shudder picking this up in the future, though. It's a film from Belgium with some pretty strong French extremity vibes. It's about the daughter of a famous but uncaught serial killer. So no one knows that she's the daughter of the serial killer. And because of this, she has to keep her family life hidden away from her colleagues and everyone else in her life, right? So she's living this kind of double life. And in the background of all of this, there is a new killer who copycats the MO of her father and has started abducting women in her area. This is not a movie I would recommend to everyone. I think a fair criticism of this film is that it's needlessly cruel. There are a lot of really heavy themes in this film, some of which I expected, other which I did not. It almost feels like there were multiple different scripts of this film, and they were all jammed together in the final product. So I guess what I'm saying here is that I would have liked to see something a little more cohesive than the experience that I got. Nevertheless, this film got me really nostalgic for movies like High Tension, Frontiers, or Inside. I think there is something here if you want some of that French extremity in your life, but you know, this one's from Belgium. At least they speak French. It's close enough. Vortex is Gaspar Noé's latest film. For this one, he's toned down the psychedelic aspects of his filmmaking that you would see in a film like Climax or Enter the Void. Vortex is not like a drug-fueled nightmare like those films. This is a kitchen sink drama with a leading role from Dario Argento, which is quite the surprise. I've never seen him act before. I also have to mention that this whole thing is shown in split screen, and this is maybe the part that didn't work for me quite as much. Certain scenes are actually super neat, and you can see that they really benefit from the split screen format, and others not so much. But I'm kind of torn on this, because I want to applaud bold creative choices, and then there's this other part of me that thinks that the whole split screen thing makes the movie feel a little too gimmicky. I also have to mention that this film is 2.5 hours long. Personally, this is not necessarily a film I would watch again, but I certainly don't regret seeing it. Dawn Breaks Behind the Eyes is fucking wild. I don't even think I can tell you what this movie is about, because I left the cinema perplexed. Before this movie started, a small message from the director popped up, and he said, like, hey, enjoy the ride, this is a bit of a mindfuck. And then the movie played. It was a short message. Still, even with that warning, I was not ready for the experience that this movie had in store for me. This is clearly inspired by European horror films from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And this is where your mileage may vary, because I love all that stuff. So I can acknowledge that in that aspect, this movie feels almost made for me, because this movie, it manages to capture some of that same feeling of like
what the hell am I watching? That you would get from something like The Psychic or Cat in the Brain by Lucio Fulci. But at the same time, it doesn't necessarily feel like a straight homage or rip-off of all that stuff. The movie, like, it takes turns that I did not see coming at all. This is the only film of the festival where I walked out and I immediately wanted to go back in and see it again. It might be, as I said, like I couldn't decipher the message of this movie. So it might be all style and no substance, but nevertheless, I loved my time with it. So when this was announced as the opening movie for the festival, I had no idea that this was even a thing. But apparently, from the director of the Oscar-winning The Artist comes a French-speaking remake of One Cut of the Dead. It's simply called Final Cut. It's made with 20 times the budget of the original One Cut of the Dead. And it's fascinating. Like, as I said, I had no idea this movie was a thing. I want to back up before I talk about the movie. I want to back up and say that I respect the hell out of the original One Cut of the Dead. I don't think the humor of that film really spoke to me, though. And that is so tough because I know, humor is so subjective. Final Cut is pretty much a straight remake of One Cut of the Dead. So if you've seen the original, you know the structure of the film and you know the basic plot outline. To me, however, Final Cut is a much funnier and tighter film. So if you're watching this video right now and you thought the original One Cut of the Dead was hilarious and you laughed out loud a bunch of times, you will probably have the opposite reaction to this. Still, I do think this is a really good remake, and there's enough unique things about it that makes the story worth revisiting, even if you've seen the original and love the original. I really, really enjoyed this remake.
And lastly, I just want to say thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Tell me what else you want to see on this channel. I really appreciate everyone's kind words, and I'm just trying to recommend some movies. I like movies, especially horror. So, that being said, please have a good one and take care of yourselves and all that. I'll see you again soon.